Okay. Hello, Greg. Thank you so much for being here virtually in Albany with us.
Hello, my pleasure.
Um, you are in Brooklyn, I presume?
I'm in Brooklyn. I'm at home in Brooklyn. Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. We have a kind of a twin background going on. Books,
Hey.
fireplace.
Yeah, yeah. You're
Yeah.
well, obviously you're in Albany.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think there's a kind of similar New York architecture kind of
Yeah.
feel going
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm betting your house in Bed-Stuy was built maybe around the same time as this house in
Exactly.
Albany.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fascinating. Okay, so hello. This is How Hard Could It Be? A literary salon schmooze, the title of which is a reference to the sort of small talk trope that many writers find ourselves privy to, where people say, "Hey, you're a writer. I'm a writer too. I have an idea for a book. And you say, "Good luck. How hard could it be?" Um, and Yeah, I don't know. So this is the third in our series so far. It was conceived as just a little cycle of three, but I think we're going to continue thanks to the amenability of the Friends and Foundation of the Albany Public Library. This was conceived as like a really informal hangout, like old school public access, low stakes, just, chatting for an hour at lunchtime. Um, I don't know about you, Greg, but I am always fascinated by the way that we writers, artists, literary artists, call us what you will, are expected to sort of shift between the kind of professionalism and respectability of speaking about our work publicly and trying to be cogent and coherent and then the kind of loose, free, improvisational, frankly, kind of emotionally irresponsible,
Messy, yeah.
messy way that we have to show up to actually do the work in the first place, and it's hard. So this is supposed to be like an easy thing, not like a formal thing, not a stuffy thing.
So this is the disclaimer
Yeah.
part,
Yeah.
right? That whatever a writer, well, I'll speak for myself, whatever I say about my work after the fact is BS.
Yeah.
Right? So it's me, reflecting and saying, well, how would I like my work to be read, and how can I frame it in a way that makes it seem as smart and intentional as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when you're in it, you have no idea what's going on and what's going to happen, and it's really an act of faith and luck, and this is what makes writing so scary to me, is that it's a constant exercise in self-acceptance.
Yeah.
Right? What I come up with is I'm trying to be as honest as possible, and I'm always aware that I might not like what what shows up.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's the negotiation after the fact of, well, how much do I clean that up,
Mm-hmm.
versus how much is it integral to the overall landscape of the work.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. So right, we're like agents of chaos and destruction, and then after the fact, we're like, oh yeah, I meant to do that. Exactly. Yes, yes. All the order that you have imposed upon this chaos that I've been playing with, and these shadows that I've been like dancing around with. Yes, you're right.
That's exactly what I meant. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. And in fact, I'm so removed from it now that I can stand with you, reader, audience, critic, and ponder it from that standpoint. It's a betrayal on some level
Well, yeah, it really is.
of the chaos and the shadow self and all the things. And then okay, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but then how do you get back in? How do you switch? How do you Do you compartmentalize completely? You're also doing a lot of work in the academic realm, and I want to talk about that too, because that's another.
It's another boondoggle, yeah. Well, I guess I try to integrate I think about it, you know, there's the hermeneutic circle, right? So this idea that I let the barnyard go free a little bit in my mind, and the chaos happens, and then I'll sit back and say, well, okay, well, what kind of sense can I make out of this? And then try to impose a little bit of order, and then, you know, go back to chaos and try to keep that wheel spinning. Mm-hmm. But it's really difficult between projects. You know, once I've gotten out of the one project, because there's a tendency, or I have a tendency, to think about my overall career, my overall, you know, output, and think, well, when I'm long gone, what are all of these, you know, what is all this work going to look like? And that's just not healthy.
No.
So there, you know, I'm trying to, and I think to your question, the goal is to try to get out of that kind of 30,000 foot view and get back to some kind of innocent naivete as I'm moving into the new project, and just allow to happen whatever is going to happen.
So instead of the bird's eye view, you got to cultivate the bug's eye view.
The bug's eye view. You got to get the bug's eye view.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. I've spent the last week very, very deep in this amazing book. It's been a real trip. I'm kind of reeling. I feel like I need to go back to the beginning. I feel like this is a book that like taught me how to read it, which is the highest compliment I think there is. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's entirely its own book, I feel. Maybe I'm just not well read enough, but like.
Well, no, I am absolutely honored you say that. But that's also the biggest downfall is that the book is what I'm finding in retrospect, you know, doing this thing now of standing with the reader and saying, you know, well, this is what I think I meant, I hope I meant. I do, from this point of view, I do think the book is asking a lot of a reader's patience and attention, right? Because it's divided into these two halves, and the first half is, in a very coded way, giving you all of the, you know, sort of paradigmatic elements that will be necessary to, you know, contextualize the ideas that come in the second half. And I don't write that anywhere explicitly.
You have to read it. The reader actually has to read it. It's like you have to actually go through the process to get the product.
But Elisa, you're a prose writer, right? And so you know more better than the, you know, the poet's mind, the poet's approach to writing does, is that your relationship in prose with a reader, well, I'm not going to say has to be, but is often a much more generous and you know, and way leading, and, you know, instructional. Here's what's happening, and here's how we're going to get there.
Right.
And I think there's if and when I get to my next prose project, I think I'm going to be much more explicit about the stakes and what I want to accomplish. So the question is why? Well, so why not though? What do we gain? And that's an open question. That's not a leading question at all. What do we gain when we're not leading and kind of directive?
I think we gain the discovery. We gain the joy and the surprise and the shock of confronting what we didn't know we were going to find. And that's, there's so much of that here. This book is like a okay, now the word's escaping me. You know the like a seashell. What's that called? Like a Fibonacci.
Nautilus.
Thank you.
Nautilus.
I feel like every piece in this book, and I think it is. I read it as a collection of essays, really, and much greater than the sum of its parts. Of course, no publisher in their right mind would put that on the cover. But my goodness, Greg, you know, the first half, I was going along, and okay, things are unfolding chronologically, and here's your childhood, here's your parents meeting, here's your life unfolding. Cool, I'm in it, you know, and the way that you set the scene in terms of the town, the city, where you guys lived, the history of the neighborhoods, you know, fantastic, all of it, great, interesting. And leading up to the 1981 air traffic controller strike that shaped your dad's life so profoundly, and your life by extension, fascinating. I didn't know any of this stuff. It's not my milieu. Although I did talk to my dad about it a lot. He's a pilot. It's like his passion. He flies small planes, and he's been involved in the aviation industry. So he had a lot to say about that. So
I'm sure. Yeah,
super interesting. Maybe he'll ask you a question later. Anyway, you know, all fascinating. But of course, you know, I'm a prose writer, as you say, and I'm also a little bit of a mercenary reader. And I'm like, all right, where's the dirt? Where's the dirt? I want more dirt. I want the, like, you know, and then, oh my goodness, like, bam, we get to, like, you know, you join the Marines, which I didn't see coming, because I didn't read ahead, and I didn't look at the pictures first. And the second half of the book, wow, it's just, okay, here's my question. Yeah. I can just say wow and amazing and whatever for a while.
Which is great, which I will.
You know, but I can't, the thing about reading a book, and a book you love, and a book that is so much more than the sum of its parts, and that can't be, you know, summarized efficiently on jacket copy, is that if you want to talk about it with somebody, like, that person just has to have read it. Like, there's just no way, you know. We can plot summary all we want. We can say amazing, and we can use all the hyperbolic adjectives, but okay, here's my question. Part one, part two. What was the process like? How did the writing of this book go? Was part one a different journey for you? Did it all happen in layers? What did this process look like?
Should I answer that now or wait till part two?
No, answer that.
Oh, okay, all right. So back to this idea of the circle, right? This hermeneutic circle. I started chronologically. Well, when I started writing it, I thought I was going to write wasn't very imaginative at all. It was a memoir. It was just a study of my life as it kind of came into contact with the air traffic control strike of 1981. Puberty, strike, crisis, everything was there. I had faith that I would just write a story about that. I got through it, and as I was writing this manuscript, I just kept thinking like a poet, and digressing from plot, digressing from narrative, and seeing all these. I mean, the symbolic nature of air traffic control was just such a rich and fun thing to play with. And then I started doing the interviews with family members, and I was thinking about different ways to integrate that material. And then another layer came up, and that was I just got fascinated with the labor history, right? And so there was this kind of scholarly research that I started geeking out on that I really wanted to do justice. And I was in a bit of a, which you see in the book, I was in a bit of a crisis around that time, personally in my life anyway. And so I, working with my therapist, I had the inspired idea that I would get another MFA and work on this book under the auspices of an MFA program that would allow me to experiment with all of these different modes. And so I went to Columbia, and I spent the next 3 years studying first-person nonfiction work, and it gave me a lot of obviously a big education and a lot of ways to think about the writing, but it also how do I say this? I'm absolutely grateful for the experience I had. And it's not really a but, it's just that commercially, it took me out of a kind of the kind of writing that would appeal to, I don't know, my family, for example.
Sure.
Right. It made it literary in a way that, and it carried my interest, and I just being selfish as a writer, I sort of ran with that. So anyway, I had this manuscript going into the MFA program, and then during the MFA program, I decided I was more of an essayist because the essay form allowed me to do all the messy stuff I wanted to do, and so I started cherry picking the kind of bright embers out of the longer manuscript, and then developing essays around those sort of hotspots. Then I meet the commercial publishing industry,
right?
And so once we sold the book, then my editor said, well, as you said, nobody's going to buy a collection of essays, with all of this kind of metaphorical work in it. And she actually put everything into a very strict chronological order.
Yeah.
Again. And then I, looking at that, started revising all of the essays so that they had, so that they kind of spoke, across this divide. So I hadn't seen the first half and second half thing until she put it in that order. And then, we started to revise toward that direction. And
your dad died before the book was done, right?
No, he died before the book was published.
Oh, okay.
I guess, he died before it was done. We had sold the book.
Yeah.
So he knew the book had been sold. And I think I mentioned in the book, when I told him, his response was Denzel Washington. That was the only thing he said.
Yes. Your dad is a really, really intense and beautiful character here. To me, he's a character. To you, he's a human being.
Well, he's totally a character. And that's another craft concern that we writers talk about.
Yeah.
They're real people in life, and yes, we honor and revere the real people. But when they're on the page, we have a very different relationship to them, right? And the way I treat my father on the page is not, I'm much more intimidated and cowed and sort of hysterical in my behavior around the real person, right? And much more measured on the page.
Sure. Well, measured is one word, or like merciless, or you know, to some extent, I think that's part of why I became a writer. Like the real life dynamics between, you know, me and my tormentors or ghosts or whatever you want to call it was impossible. And I'm cowed and I'm silent. And then when I'm alone with a pen, I am a wrathful God, you know? The power dynamics, just no better way, you know?
Yeah.
But then as you hilariously pointed out, I mean, first of all, beautiful, beautiful cover design. I mean, the space between you is in the center of the book. Also adorable. Hi, little Greg. And then, as you hilariously pointed out, your dad will be grinning at you from the bookshelf for the rest of eternity. That's too good. Too good. Stranger than fiction. But you know, memoir. I write some memoir sometimes, you know, for shits and giggles, but mostly fiction in which I feel completely free.
Yeah.
Because it's not real, you know. I change one little piece here, one little piece there, you know. Somebody with green eyes suddenly has purple eyes, and like, it's not you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's the easy way out to some extent. And you don't seem to be letting yourself off the hook here at all. I mean, I think that's the other thing. You can take people to task in nonfiction, but you also have to be merciless with yourself, and you are.
Yeah, and you know, consistent with this idea that the people on the page are characters, and they have to be full characters, right? They can't be completely horrible, evil people, and they can't be saints either, right? They have to be human beings. My I character has to be a full character, and again, back to what I was saying earlier, that what terrifies me about writing is, you know, having this kind of ruthless honesty and calling bullshit on myself, you know, just repeatedly over and over again. I want to capture the fullness of the I character on the page, but at the same time, I recognize, and that's not a but either. At the same time, I recognize that the reader is making an equation between the I character on the page and me. Mm-hmm. And my impulse is to correct, is to say, you know, and I think this is legit in many cases. What I thought then was blah blah blah. What I think now is something a little different. But I also wanted to, and this was you know, when we get to the point where I haven't sort of dissociated myself with the writer from before.
You have not?
I have, at this point, I mean, the point that I'm getting at now is I have not made sense of the tension between wanting to be wanting not only to be honest and sort of forthright about what I thought then,
yeah,
but also to recognize and to be honest with the reader that what I think now, I don't have a lot of faith in what I think right now.
Which right? is how we know we can trust you.
Well, I hope that's the case, right? But I'm, and I guess again, you can see that this is the tender part that still remains is, you know, how do you admit to being a flawed human being and sort of, and also impart a confidence that I'm trying to figure it out at the same time.
I don't know how you make anything worthwhile without that tension. You know, anybody with certainty or like moral superiority, like what is that work? That's, yeah. I mean, that's kindling is what that is. That's like, I'm sorry. You know, okay, your dad. I want to talk about your dad a little bit more. I feel like I got such a incredible snapshot of. I love this photo. I love this photo.
Oh yeah.
These photos were all such a gift. Once I had sort of made my way through and formed my own ideas of these people, your brother, your mom, your dad, your aunts, your grandparents. To be rewarded with that was pretty nice. I mean, I could have done some Googling and maybe, you know, stitch it together myself, but it's really, you know, your Instagram feed and whatever. But and that's another, I have so many questions. That's another question in terms of like, poetry doesn't necessarily have to situate itself in terms of like where it is in time. You know, it can and maybe should, forgive me because poetry is not my forte and I might speak unintelligently about it, but it doesn't have to be situated so precisely in a moment of time as prose does. Like a narrative has to be told from a certain vantage point, and it will always be that vantage point. But a poem can exist, I think, in a less specific
in lyric time. Yeah,
right, lyric time. So given that, did it feel very exposed to publish narrative nonfiction? Did you feel like you were out there in a different way, and was it uncomfortable? Was it strange?
Yeah, well, this is. I think we're restating the discomfort, or you're helping me articulate the discomfort that I have, and that is, I think, at that point of I'm thinking about the work as an experiment or an exploration of identity, and as I say, this challenge of self-acceptance, and I want the work, much like in the way that I think about my poetry, I want the work to be an example of the exercise, right? The work is the event. It's not a record of the event. It is the event, right? And
process over product, as you try to explain to your dad at some point, and he does not.
Does not get right.
No, it's just anathema to his worldview, right?
Yeah. That's That was in the Waldorf education conversation, and right, and poetry.
Wow, private school. Which brings up another, you know, so much about this book seemed to me about the tension between our inheritance versus our bequest. What we're being given when we enter this life, what we're carrying from those who came before, in a familial sense and in a global sense, obviously.
Right.
And then what we're gonna pass on. How are we going to like transmute everything into what we can live with ourselves for sort of saddling our children with, and private school, so that you guys end up sending your kids to this Manhattan Waldorf school. Fascinating. And your family is just like, what the hell? No media? What the hell? Okay, wait, but before we go into that, your dad's inability to understand poetry or writing as this,
or his resistance. He won't even countenance the idea.
But okay, so I couldn't stop laughing because he says, like, you know, nobody wins at poetry, right? Like, you know, if it's like a sports game, you get a trophy, the guy who crosses the finish line. But hold up, because like, you won. Like, you literally won poetry. You literally won it. So like, straight up.
That was an unforeseen wrinkle.
It kind of changes everything. Was he alive when you won the Pulitzer?
Yeah, and he resented it a little bit. Not surprising, perhaps.
Not surprising.
So as I say in the book, you know, towards the end of his life, we were communicating almost exclusively by text message, right? And so that was when he found out he didn't contact me when I told my mother he didn't contact me either time, when I won the Pulitzer, nor when I told, when I thought he would have heard that we had sold the book. But when the Pulitzer came out, I called my mother, I called everybody, but I never talked to him. It was only by text. So I didn't call him directly at all. And it was a couple of days that had gone by, and he texted me about something, completely unrelated. And I said, well, wait a minute. Didn't you hear that I won the Pulitzer Prize? And he texts back, and I don't remember if this is in the book or not, but he texts back, when during the Roman times, when a general conquered a village, the Caesar would send a slave to ride alongside him to remind him that he's only human.
Oh yeah, that's in the beginning. That's in the beginning of Air Traffic, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. So don't be too proud of yourself, right?
Don't get ahead of yourself. It's basically
it's contradictory though.
Which is contradictory entirely.
Right. Because if you cross the finish line first, nobody's telling you not to be too happy with yourself. You get a freaking trophy. Like, game over, right?
Yeah. So another wrinkle there. So the introduction, as you know, the introduction is often the last thing that gets written. Yeah. Right. And so this was well after the fact I went back and wrote that opening chapter or essay. But I don't know, I guess even in my head, and I don't know if this is my father's influence, but the prizes and fellowships and so on, I guess I don't see them as winning. I don't see them as, sort of rungs that they're abstract.
Which is healthy. Right? Which is very healthy. Very, very healthy.
Yeah. Unless we can't accept compliments and it can get to that side as well, when someone refuses to accept that there's any value in what one does, and that could get that problematic.
Yeah, but that's a practice, isn't it? Like like learning how to accept a compliment, especially when you start out. You published 2 collections of poetry, both with very respectable small presses. So it's like it's a pretty big leap to then suddenly be a Pulitzer. Forget even in your mind, but the way that others treat you.
Yeah.
A little bit of a mind fuck.
It was considerably. Yeah. It was a big. I don't know if you want to get into that or.
Well, it's funny. This is like this is supposed to be informal, but like it's impossible to be informal on Zoom with an audience while it's recording to go on YouTube, So it's like I had this idea that we would recreate like a sort of an informal hangout, like we might do if life was normal.
Yeah.
But there is no recreating that, is there? So, all right, onward. Okay, so poetry versus prose, inheritance versus bequest. These are the things I most wanted to talk to you about. And the following the private school essay, this beautiful piece, which is it reads different from the other essays, Behind the Wheel. This essay where you're driving your family, your wife is in the passenger seat, your mother-in-law is in the back seat, flanked by your 2 daughters, and it's just a beautiful day. It's Mother's Day, right? You've been at the Botanical Garden in Brooklyn, but you don't want to go home yet. It's just too beautiful, so you're gonna go find somewhere else to, keep the party going. But this ride unfolds into just, it's such a set piece. I love it. And then you end up in this deep conversation with your little girls and your wife and your mother-in-law about the labor movement, about religion. Like, you know, it really spun me, this one.
Oh, thanks.
I hope somebody makes like a short film out of this piece. This needs to just be like a 10-minute short.
Well, you know, there wasn't, there were a number of inquiries, and I think the obstacle that we kept hitting was, how do we transform this into, you know, a visual format? You know, just structurally, I think that was the biggest obstacle. Is it a series? Is it a full-length film? Is it
like the entire book, you mean?
Right.
Yeah. No, I just love this piece as a short, you know. It could be a cartoon, it could be anything. I don't care. I just love it. That final line. I mean, if you don't mind if I read your book back to you. Your daughter's asking you like to explain what a union is. You know, they see a giant inflatable rat, and meanwhile Brooklyn is changing all around you very, very rapidly. Construction, development, high rises, condos. A scab is someone who does her own thing instead of sticking together with everyone else, is your explanation. And this moment of silence, like this beat, and your daughter says, but isn't that what we're supposed to do? It's beyond. It's just brilliant. Also the line, people go to church, you know, what's religion? Why do people go to church? Why don't we go to church? People go to church in order to be with others who think about the world in the same way they do, you tell her. And you say, we do go to a place like that, only we don't call it church, we call it the coffee shop. I'm sorry, okay. Now I just had to do like a dramatic reading of that. It's so good. And what a beautiful hinge that essay functions as too, between this idea of like all the things that you've inherited and the way that you're trying to translate, for lack of a better word, or, you know, transmute might be a better word. Like, you know, you're trying to, why do we do all this? Do we do it for literature? Do we do it like this honest inventory, you know, to use the AA language? Is it for our piece? Is it for literature? Is it for art? Or like, is it also for our children? So they don't have to reinvent the wheel, so that maybe we can spare them. Or something.
But they end up having to reinvent, and we want them to reinvent something, right? Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Aren't we supposed to take responsibility for our own lives and make of that, you know, what we've been given, make it something new? Well, there's a couple of things. The union piece, right, became this kind of note that I kept seeing emerge throughout the text, and then I capitalized. And this is back to the writing process. You know, once I see a pattern, it's like, oh, let me now explore the implications of that pattern. What is a union? And so a union is a family, a union is a marriage, a union is a community, a union is a racial identity, right? It's people coming together with a purpose and an intention, and shared interests.
An MFA program?
A union is an MFA program. A university, perhaps, a very flawed union. But, you know, and what are the mechanics of that coming together, right? And how do we serve all the constituents of the union? And so all of these questions were kind of at the center. Back to this really fundamental question of why, you know, what is the payoff? And I was looking forward to talk to you for many reasons, but one was to get back to, I wrote you a couple of years ago, and I asked you about how you felt about showing our kids in our Instagram feed.
Did you? Oh yeah. We had this conversation, and it was for a poem.
Yeah. And so and this is right on the heels of all of this air traffic question. Is I'm thinking, because I'm often asked, well, how do you feel about revealing family business in your work, and how do you feel about depicting your children in your work? And I wanted to, so I've been working on this poem for a long time now that, directly asks, how do I feel about showing my kids, depicting my kids in an Instagram feed, which is very contrived as well, right? And so in some sense, and arguably much more indelible, more indelible than my writing about them could be if it's in on Instagram.
I hope not. I hope not. The servers will die someday, right? But ink and paper.
One hopes one technology wins out, right? Yeah, over the other. But it captures this question of I am constructing, and I'm necessarily constructing their identity because I want them to carry forth a piece of what I've built, right, in the abstract. But I also want them to evolve on their own, but not too far. And so there's there's a balance there that I'm still kind of thinking through.
It's a little creepy, I've never met your children, but I feel some strange familiarity with them because I know some of their story, and I know what they look like, and I like seeing them. I know their names. I know I have in my mind that image of the beautiful star on top of your Christmas tree that your mother made when you were very small, and it was supposed to be temporary, but it's lasted decades and decades and decades. And it's a strange thing.
Yeah.
There's a presumed intimacy that is completely, I hope to meet your children someday. It would be lovely.
Yeah. But and I would be, I wonder, would I be mortified for you to find out that they're nothing like I've depicted them?
Well, I don't think you've sold them out in any way. I don't have expectations of them. I don't think you've built up anything that they could possibly fail to live up to. It's like that.
There is a discrepancy, though. There's necessarily going to be a discrepancy. Just like I assume you're about to point out, there are characters in the book that are real people, of course, but there's no way I can an Instagram feed nor a book can render a person.
No, of course not. But a reader has to know that. Any reader, hopefully, any sane reader, which is asking a lot. I realize that might be a bridge too far, but we know this. We're magpies. We take scraps and we build something new. And I don't think it's necessarily exploitative. I think it can be, and I think it when you see it. I feel like I know it when I see it, and I can think of some examples, which if we were at a sidewalk cafe right now, I'd be happy to explicate. But it's like that old saw about pornography. Like, what is it? When you see it. There's definitely some figures who exploit in a way that gives me, the creeps.
Yeah.
I don't know. When you see it. We all have to sort of make use of what we have, I think, materially.
Yeah. I guess also I'm having moved from poetry, or having had a glimpse into the commercial publishing world, I've encountered readers who are far less generous than in the poetry community. Right? The demands on a book are very different.
Right. It's a commodity in a different way, and you are a commodity in a different way, and everything is presumed to be fair game, and there's a little bit less of like a sort of respectful scrim.
Yeah, exactly. That scrim being craft, being artistry.
Right. The assumption is you simply like dredged up some stuff, you sold it, you know, you got paid, so don't complain, give us more dirt, right?
Yeah.
And you yourself are like, you know, a spectacle to be sort of mined for further material. And you must not mind because you've already like hung out your dirty laundry or whatever. I mean, it's so simplistic and bullshitty.
Yeah, which I wouldn't mind if the and this is all a spectrum. I'm not suggesting that everybody, you know, the world is one way or another. But if there were more, and I think this is probably part of my agenda as a teacher, is to infuse as many conversations around literature with the understanding, with a healthy regard for the craft, for the fact that one is, you know, engaging in a creative practice, and not, which I think is very often the case, particularly with poetry. This is a shortcoming of poetry, is that there's an assumption that there's no cognition, there's no cognitive, you know, work being done there. That we're just you know, put the pen down and turn, you know, hit on, and it all flows.
There you go. Right? How hard could it be? Right. Right? That's the whole joke. It's like,
how hard could it be?
It's really hard. And I mean, and part of the problem with that approach too is that it does look at a book or a poem or a narrative as a product instead of as a process.
Right.
And anyway, I'm not going to try to summarize this essay. Can you pronounce that name for me?
Schelker?
Schelker, thank you. I'm not going to even try to summarize that essay. That was one of the most complex, stunning, shocking, and important essays I think I've ever read. And then this, A Colored People's Time, wow. The ending on that one.
There's I thought I might have it handy, but a wonderful thing happened with that essay, and that was, it inspired, at least I'm told it inspired, an exhibition at a gallery at the University of Pennsylvania on time and conceptions of time. And there's a gallery, there's a book, right, that goes along with the exhibition that collected essays, and you know, of course, they got permission to include that essay, and so that was a highlight of publishing this book.
This last third of the book was just like, you know, mind blown over. I was like, okay, that was the highlight. I mean, that's like the high point of the book, and then it was like, nope, he's gonna keep going. The beginning and the ending of Colored People's Time, don't expect a straight line. My canvas is time, and I don't want to approach the thing using its own logic through the pretense of a single discrete authoritative position. You should be reading your own work. I shouldn't be reading it to you.
No, I love this. I love it.
And then the ending, the way that this essay, for those who, you just need to read it, but if you're not gonna, it's about a grandfather clock that is recovered from a storage facility, and your expectations
belonged to my actual grandfather.
Belonged to your actual grandfather, but you weren't sure what its origins were, and you had all these ideas, and then you had all these ideas about the guy working at the storage facilities, ideas about you coming to, like, all of these. I mean, just, you know, you've done so much here. The layers, and I can't spoil it, but where the origin of the clock ends up to be just one of the greatest punchlines, I think, in contemporary literature. Okay. Before we run out of time,
Yeah.
I could talk to you all day. And I was going to ask you to read a poem. I don't know if you're up for that. But if you are,
if we have time,
I would love that. And if you have one that you want to read, go for it. If not, I'll suggest one.
No. Oh, you want to do that now?
I would love to do that last. And
yeah.
Before that, I would love to ask you to tell us about your new position at Rutgers.
So this is complicated. So I got a phone call, or no, an email rather, which turned into a phone call last October. I saw over the last summer, that the university, I teach at Rutgers University, and until recently, I was the director of the MFA program there in Camden. And I saw in our university correspondence that we have a new president coming in, President Jonathan Holloway, the first African-American president at Rutgers University. And one of a kind of part of the fanfare of him coming in was he came in with this $15 million grant from the Mellon Foundation to do, the social and racial justice work. Specifically the work that everybody's been talking about doing, post Floyd and in this historical moment. Let's put our money where our mouth is, make something happen. And so I'm thinking, what are they going to do with this? How are they going to make good? And I'm kind of cynical. But then I get this email saying, we're starting an institute at the university called the Institute for the Study of Global Racial Justice. And there are going to be branches on each of the Rutgers campuses, New Brunswick, Camden, and Newark. We would like you to be the director of the Camden branch. And I thought, holy shit, now I'm that guy. What am I going to do? How am I going to, make the very changes? It's like, the person, I felt like the guy who sits in his living room complaining about the football team, and why is the coach doing this? Why is it? And then somebody says, okay, now you're the coach, right? So I was very excited. I started getting some ideas together. In the meantime, I had been in conversations with NYU in Abu Dhabi. And I don't know if you know this part, because I don't think I've mentioned this yet. But maybe a week, as I said, I'd been in conversations with them. And then a week or so after I get invited to take over the directorship in Camden, I get offered a 3-year visiting position at NYU in Abu Dhabi.
Whoa.
So, and this had been a conversation in the family for a while, if this ever came about, would we do it? And the girls were really excited. My wife Ginger is really excited. Of course we would do it. The girls would get to live abroad and study Arabic and, and all this wonderful stuff. And then again, here it is. What are you going to do? So yes, of course I'm going to take it. And so we're leaving in August.
Wow.
We're going to move to Abu Dhabi for 3 years.
Wow.
Where I'm going to teach at NYU. But in the meantime, I still have this very important work to do with the Institute. And there's no way I'm going to let that go. Okay. So we split the position. My good friend and colleague, Patrick Rosal, who's also a poet in Camden, is co-directing. And so he'll be working, on site in Camden, and I will be working globally for the Institute for the Study of Global Racial Justice in Abu Dhabi. And
it's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. What are you going to do with your house in Brooklyn?
We'll find a tenant. For it.
You need a house sitter or anything? Just let me know. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And pets? What about pets?
So this is one of the heartbreaking things is Abu Dhabi doesn't allow, we have a rabbit and we have a dog now. the dog, it costs more to bring a dog than it does to bring a human being over to Abu Dhabi. So the dog is staying, and rabbits are just not allowed into the country, period.
They can't have rabbits flying across international. Yeah. No, that doesn't work.
So we gotta, looks like we're saying goodbye to our family rabbit.
Okay, well, I'm sure the rabbit will have another
We'll find it. Yeah, we'll find a home.
That's hugely exciting for you guys. That's just wow. Please don't be stingy on the Instagrams from Abu Dhabi, all right?
No, yeah.
please, I want to see. That's really, congratulations.
Thanks.
Wow. Can't wait to hear about, what comes out of that, all of it. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the influence it'll have on my work, and in addition to everything else.
Yeah. Huge new chapter. Amazing. And how old are your girls now?
13 and 16.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So Sarah's actually going to graduate from Abu Dhabi.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. What a life. Okay. That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. I'm kind of reeling on your behalf. All right. So do you have a favorite poem from Digest that you like to read?
No.
Will you
get my copy here.
Okay. All right. Then will you indulge me and read Problema 2 on page 11?
Yeah. So this started with me reading Kierkegaard's Fear and Loathing. Fear and Trembling. I was getting confused.
Trepidation?
No, it's Fear and I get it confused with that movie title, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. It's Fear and Trembling.
Do you know the part, there's a part of Air Traffic where you describe how when somebody is talking about a book you haven't read, you have this specific arrangement of your face and this kind of nod, like you don't need to keep talking about this book because of course I've read it. So let's just move on.
Let's move on.
Yeah, that.
So it's thinking about the Abraham and Isaac is the kind of core story. The epigraph is, "My father, they have killed me." That's from Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart. Consider throwing the baby from the window, a figure of speech, barely reaching across the fence, separating expression from intent. For all our sakes, I tell my wife, I'm going to throw the baby out the window now. As I rise from the sofa in response to the midnight wail of another footy uprising, heard among the moans and whines of our neighbors' appliances and the various alarms of the city's eternal self-soothing. The ancient hardwood floor in the bedroom upstairs groaning under 30-pound footsteps for the 4th time tonight. It's nearly July in Brooklyn. Windows are open. Consider the neighbors grimacing, pillowing their ears against the little one's battle cry. Because I'm teaching Euripides in the fall, I'm reading him now between commercial breaks and imagining far-flung Brooklyn quorumed in the armories and in streets beneath the ginkgos and buttonwoods, crowds gathered to mandate I quiet my lamb eternally. What if my neighbors read my hyperbole as oath and made me keep my word? Who would I betray? Would I smuggle my muling daughter to Canada? Flee this land? I do love Brooklyn so. I have lent a neighborly ear to elderly West Indians on the B-44 from Bed-Stuy to Flatbush, heard them lament Yankee reluctance to use old country discipline, which, they claim, is the only real solution to this climate of gang foolery. Spanking, yes. The sacramental rod tanning backsides of the elect few, a ritual hazing to appease the divinity of the unknowable and omnipresent urban populace. Consider the vanity of sacrifice. the paper tiger of blind devotion fanning the dander of a timid hand. Consider Agamemnon, victim of pride and contagion, raising that hand against his child at Aulis. The inexorable machinery of tribalism grinding away the primacy of paternal love. Beware the prophet, the genie, the divine stranger who, with a wink, unmasks your arrogant self-images, who finds the harmonic note that gathers your most discordant emotions toward the mute accumulation of will. What I do this night, I do for you, Brooklyn, I offer, as the banister whimpers beneath my trembling hand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Every time I've ever heard you read poems out loud, there's like a very particular silence that follows the last line. You really shut down a room or a Zoom room in the best way. Thank you. Okay, last thing I just want to point out to you, I have a record here from fall 2015 when you were last in when you were in Albany. I don't know if it's the last time you were in Albany, but you said, may we all move to Albany one day. You wrote it here. So I just want to remind you of that. And then the last thing I want to ask you is, you signed it with genuine admiration. So my question to you is it usually not?
It's usually not.
Just with admiration. And then once in a while. That's awesome.
Once in a while, I would have part the curtains and be like, no, this one.
No, really. All right. Well, until we meet up for karaoke in Abu Dhabi, cheers to you. Thank you so much for your time. Time being the only currency. And I hope I'll speak to you soon and stay in touch. Thank you again.
Cool. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Talk to you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Greg.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.